Hello, welcome to the Copycat Stitch podcast. For those of you who are new here and those of you who aren't, but it's been so long since I uploaded a podcast, I have to forgive you for forgetting who I am. I'm Bailey. I'm the Copycat Stitch on YouTube and on Instagram. And once again, I'm giving you the talk about how I had no idea it would be this long. I didn't mean to leave it this long between podcasts. Now I have so much to talk about, but that's just part of me, I guess. One of my New Year's resolutions was to create a schedule and upload podcasts much more frequently. And incidentally, life got very much in the way, and that has not even been a possibility for me. Thank you so much for your patience. I really appreciate it. I know that it's been too long between videos. I know that I've been teasing bigger, better videos that I have not released. Frankly, my full-time job has just started to take up more than my full-time hours. And it's, I'm working longer hours and then I'm exhausted and I don't have the time and energy to work on this at the end of the day. And it's eating into my weekends in that in the past, when my job wasn't quite so demanding, I was able to work on this because I had energy left over from the week. And the last couple months, I have not had any energy left over. So, not apologizing, I'm just explaining. That's why it's been so long. I didn't want it to be this way. I've been constantly thinking about doing a new podcast and sitting down to do this and watching my finished objects and my whips and my acquisitions pile get bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's going to be a big one. So buckle up. Okay, I don't even know where to start. I barely remember what the last podcast was. I remember that it was my impromptu eclipse podcast, but I kind of don't remember what I was talking about. Well, first of all, these two I think were done at that time, but we're not quite with their finishing touches. So this vest, did I make it so long ago that I don't even remember the pattern name? Very pretty vest. Brioche. I did all of the knitting last year, except for this is the most ridiculously long-standing project for me. I did all of the knitting for the entire body of the thing and the button band last year. And then it sat unfinished because I didn't feel like doing the I-cord bind off on the armholes for months. And then I did that 2 months ago, and then it sat for 2 months until I felt like sewing the buttons on and blocking it. So, I had a day a few weeks ago where I had a little burst of energy and I decided to sew on these buttons. They're just plastic not reconstruction. What is that word? It's going to be one of those days, guys. I worked 9 hours today. It's 5 p.m. I don't normally record podcasts this late, but it's getting to the point where I don't think I'm ever going to have an appropriate time to do it again. So these are, the words going through my head are imitation, reconstruction, but that's not what I mean. They're new buttons that look like old buttons. My vocabulary is suffering for my exhaustion. Anyway, this vest is really cute. I haven't worn it. It's very drapey and pretty. I think blocking did wonders for it, for the shaping of it. And I will be very happy to wear it in the fall and winter, which I think is what it's better suited for, because now it's already spring here, which means it's nearly summer, because New York State has spring for less than a month before it turns into summer weather. So I'm very happy and appreciative that it is spring and I'm enjoying it, which actually might be the reason that I'm having enough willpower to film this today, because the weather is so beautiful today. But also, forgive the background noise if you hear it, because neighbors are neighboring today. It's a beautiful day. There's dogs walking by. There's lawnmowers running. There's children screeching, as they do. So I'm going to do my best. Usually this microphone that's clipped on my shirt doesn't pick up so much from a distance, but if it's there, I'm sorry. The other one that I believe was finished last time, but I hadn't blocked yet, was this, my Danica pullover. And you know what? Last time I was hesitant. I wasn't sure if I loved it because it wasn't the shape I expected it to be. But after blocking, it did improve it a lot. And it's still not perfect. It still doesn't fit like the other one I made, which I think is just a function of the materials I chose. But I do like it a lot more, and I have worn it. and it is incredibly soft. I love this lofty yarn from the yarn distributor formerly known as Knit Crate. But it's very nice, and I guess I just thought I would show you the blocked version. I mean, hopefully I have a photo. I think I took a photo when I wore it. If I did, I'll put it in here, but I honestly don't remember. I should have. I usually try to take photos when I wear my makes because then I can add them to the project page. Okay, and the other one that I know I introduced last time, but I had just started last time or was halfway through. Who knows? I don't really remember. I know I was partway through it. Is this beauty, which I do love. I think I loved making this a lot more than I love wearing it. First of all, it's too heavy for this time of year. I held a fingering weight with a sport weight, even though the pattern called for DK, which means that even though I got gauge, like I have the right amount of stitches per 4 inches, it's a denser fabric than intended. I think I will love this come cold weather again. I did wear it once, but it's a little thick for springtime. I mean, we're getting into like 70-degree weather territory, and this is way too woolly for that. But I do like it. It's a little more yellowy than I thought. I mean, I actually chose these yarns to go together because they both had yellow undertones, but I think they kind of amplify each other. And I don't know if it's picking up on camera, but it looks like quite yellow. I guess that's not a bad thing. I don't have anything against yellow, but I guess I wasn't anticipating it somehow. Anyway, I loved working on this one. I flew through it. I blocked it with priority over all of the many things that have been, oh, son of a gun. I have more finished objects in the dining room because they're waiting to be blocked. I knew that this pile seemed a little light on finished objects, but I didn't stop to question myself. All right, well, I hope you can forgive me for flying through these and not including all of the information about all the yarns and colorways and everything. I always do make a point of putting it on the screen when I'm doing a podcast. But right now, I think if I stop to actually comment on every facet of every project, we're going to be here until my next podcast comes out. I'm going to go get those from the dining room. Okay, so for a minute there, I was languishing with too many whips. I have a very high whip threshold. I can really have a lot of projects going at a time before I start to feel overwhelmed. It's around 12. And they're different, right? I'm not like, oh, I have 12 sweaters going at the same time. No, I have a bunch of different things that fulfill different knitting needs, right? Sometimes I just want stockinette. Sometimes I want something that's like a little more involved. I almost always have at least one sweater going, usually more than one. In warm weather, I want to have light tops going. At this point, I've always got a baby knit going for my nephew, who has now been born since last time. So he's way too small to wear the stuff I already made him, but in the future, he'll get to it. So I actually finished quite a bunch of stuff back to back because I pushed myself through sleeve island after sleeve island to get through a bunch of whips at once. The ones I already show you were the ones that were simpler, that had very little finishing work, or this Neon Nectar here, which I think I failed to say the pattern name of last time. I really enjoyed the process and flew through that. After that, I had to force myself to work on a couple whips. One of them was I forced myself to finish the sweater number 14 V-neck. This has not been blocked. I think it will stretch a lot with blocking. This is, as we discussed in the past, this very odd mill end bundle from AC Moore that I have no idea what the fiber content is, although I think, based on my experience working with it, that it's mostly acrylic, possibly some natural fiber, cotton, a little bit of wool like included, but it's likely almost entirely synthetic materials. It does create a really nice, fluffy, squishy, pretty boucle style fabric. This was held double. It was kind of a pain to work with, but it didn't put me off of working with it. As you'll see later, I already started another project with the leftover quantity I have. But this, my point being that I think that this will stretch out a lot with blocking. It has no give at all where there's a seam, because it's that sort of yarn that's got like the cotton cord down the middle, or I don't know if it's cotton, but roll with me here. It's got that very firm, inflexible cord down the middle with fiber trapped in it, boucle style. So this spot where there's a seam down the shoulder, there's no give at all. But if I go with the knitting, there's a lot of give. So this will open up nicely. I do love the other sweater number 14 V-neck that I made, even though that one's entirely different because I made it with way too bulky of a yarn. I think they will fulfill different purposes in my wardrobe, and I think I will love them both. But once again, I'm not going to wear this for a while. Another sweater I will not be wearing for a while, but I am very pleased to be done with, is my Uno sweater. Now, you might remember this one from a while ago too. I was very enthusiastic to start this one, and like flew through most of it, and then ran out of yarn. And then I ordered more yarn, and then that yarn didn't come. And well, basically, let me roll it back a little bit. This is made with 2 yarns held together. The mohair, which is most of the color variation you see, it's the yellows and oranges and purples on a gray base. This is very beautiful show colorway that I bought at Indie Untangled last year. And I bought 1 skein at Indie Untangled because it was my first purchase of the day, and I talked myself out of it, even though I loved it, because I thought, it's the very first festival. I'm going to 4 festivals this weekend. I should not buy a sweater quantity at my very first purchase. But I was wrong, and I bought 1 skein of it. And then later, after I had gone to the other 3 festivals and I came home and I had thought it over, I went online and bought 2 more skeins from the dyer. And then later, I went to my local yarn store, Nitty Gritty Yarns, and I bought 3 skeins of fingering weight, smooshy in color. I don't remember what the base is, but they're fingering weight. It's either like sock blend or wool, whatever it is, in the colorway Ghost Town. And I had 3 skeins of mohair and 3 skeins of fingering, and they make this gorgeous fabric. The base gray for both of them is very similar. I truly love it. I did the body, which it's got these very pretty details on the back of the shoulder. I picked up and did the neckline. I started to get a little nervous about running out of yarn, so I stopped in the middle of the body and I knit both sleeves and bound those off. And then I thought, well, I might have to crop the body a little bit. So what? So I kept going, and then I was like, oh, well, I'm not going to have enough yarn left to do these 4 inches of ribbing at the bottom, so I might as well start that. I mean, I was up here and I got like 2 inches of ribbing done, and I was like, I'm not going to have enough yarn to get through 4 inches of ribbing. I definitely need more of the fingering weight wool. It's not going to get me through this. So that's when I went online. I found that some sellers had it, not very many. Only one of them was a company that I'd ordered from before. So I ordered the 1 skein, and at the time it said, this is a pre-order. This is not going to ship until February. Because if I didn't establish the timeline, this was January that all of this happened. So I loved this project. I was very attached to it, but I couldn't go any further until I got the fingering weight skein in. I had ordered it. It's not going to ship until next month. Okay, well, I waited and I waited and I waited. And then at the end of February, I got an email saying, ooh, this item's delayed. It'll ship within 4 weeks. So I waited 4 weeks, and I waited a 5th week, and it still hadn't shipped. So I emailed the company and asked them for a status update, and they said, we don't know when we'll get it in. Do you want us to cancel the order? So I Googled it again, and I found another website, one that I was unfamiliar with, that I'd never ordered from before, that also had the same base in the same colorway listed, and I was able to purchase 1 skein from them. So I went back and I canceled my original order, and that company shipped it to me, and I had it in less than a week. So that whole thing seemed a little pointless, but once I had it, I skeined it up and I finished this sweater. I had to frog back through the couple inches of ribbing that I had done, but since I had enough now to do the body 2 pattern, I alternated skeins for about a dozen or so rows to introduce the new ball, so there was no color blocking. And then I just continued to pattern. So this is actually not cropped at all, and the length of it is to pattern. And this also has not been blocked yet. I think the ribbing will open up a lot with blocking. another sweater that I absolutely love, that I'm very proud of, that I think is going to be just lovely to wear in 6 months. A little quick recap, quick update about these whips that I have going, because there's a lot of them, and then I also ended up with a bunch of acquisitions, which I will explain myself. I'm technically still in a yarn ban, but also I'm a human being. All right, let's look through these. I don't know why I got weird there. I mean, what else? So this is my Sweet Shop blanket. Oh, you absolutely cannot see this in this frame. Can you? Ah, my Sweet Shop blanket. It's coming along. I don't know if I showed it last time, but now I'm about, I think, 55 to 60% of the way done with the squares. I'm definitely more than halfway, and the dimensions are what they will be when the blanket is done. Still enjoying this one, but I am not pushing myself to finish it. This is kind of just it's turned into a bit of a self-care project when I need a day where I just need to not feed into my toxic productivity complex. I work on this one. It does kind of check that box of having completed something every time I finish a square, even though I still have a lot of squares to do and I'm not necessarily closer to the end of the project. It does feel nice to check off one little box at a time as I finish that project. Oh, this one I guess it's still a whip. It's basically a finished object. I just have to sew the buttons on and block it, which, as we know, sometimes takes 4 months. Anyway, remember this guy? My Luca cardigan? I worked on it last August on my vacation, and I put it away when the weather turned cool because it was a seasonal knit. And I recently went through and pulled out my warm weather knits. You'll see more of those in a moment. And I put away a couple cold weather knits that I am not going to finish until cold weather returns. So this one I had really, really loved working on when I was traveling. And honestly, once I pulled out my warm weather knits again, this is the only one I worked on until it was done. I kind of flew through it. This pattern is very addicting, and I really loved it. It's I love the texture of it. I think blocking might change it a little bit, open it up. It's got this little button band around that's curling under that you can't see. And I did find some buttons in my stash. It was actually in the stash of buttons that I inherited from my grandmother. Let me pop one in the buttonhole so you can see it. They're just these kind of iridescent pink plastic buttons. I think it's really pretty. It's going to be nice. I just have to take the time to sew the buttons on and block it, which I should do sooner rather than later, because unlike all the other finished objects here, this is actually one that I would wear right now. Something else that came from the warm weather hibernation pile that I have been working on a lot lately. Oh, it's in the middle of a row, so this isn't a good way to show you, but this is the Cottage Cork crop by Mezzo Makes. That is so cute. I don't know if it looks so cute on these like this. Maybe look at the back. The raglan looks really nice from the back. It's going to be a nice, flowy, drapey little, it's called a crop top, but it's not super cropped. And it's nice, oversized, pretty, cottagey. It's I'm making it out of this linen blend yarn, so it's already really soft, and it's only going to get softer, and it's so drapey. So that was one that I had started last summer, worked on a lot last summer, put away for the cold weather, brought it out recently, and I've been working on it a lot because I love to have a couple stockinette only projects that are in my rotation to take in the car or out and about. So that one got a lot of work on it over the last couple weeks. Another one that's, I don't even know if it's worth mentioning. I kind of started a little teeny hat for my little infant nephew. And I started it because my mom suggested that I do it so that he could wear it the day he's born. But she suggested it kind of late. So for a couple days, I kind of worked on it really, really fast. And then he was born. And I was like, well, this can hold off for a while then, because I'm not going to see them for a minute. And you don't really need a hat now. I mean, I guess babies wear hats a lot, but he's not in a hospital anymore, and it's going to be summer soon. So I will finish that later in the year and gift that to them when I see them later. Okay, another project that I'm really excited about that I have not talked about on here yet is the Moan Cardigan from Engineering Knits. She's one of my favorite YouTubers. I was really excited when she released this pattern. I kind of started it. Actually, I took a little footage. So let me talk about, I was enthusiastic to start it. This is the one that I'm using that same weird unidentified boucle yarn from AC Moron. This time I'm holding it single. I had the idea to use this for that, and I chose this self-striping yarn from Annie's that I just had in stash, a couple skeins of that I figured is enough to make this whole sweater. I made this swatch with it, and you can see it's really pretty. I really liked it. It's got this, I don't remember what she calls it, like a dot pattern or a bubble pattern using a tuck stitch. So I started knitting the cardigan with these two yarns, and almost immediately I realized I didn't like it, but I did that thing where I forced myself to keep going just in case I changed my mind and decided I do like it, which never works, but I think we all do it to a degree. I do it to an unnecessary degree. I had knit the whole cardigan, which is bottom up. So we're starting at the hem, doing the ribbing, and then each dot repeat, not each dot, but each, I guess it's 2 rows of dots because it's like the contrast color dot and then the main color dot is a 12-row repeat. And I was on the 4th contrast color repeat when I determined I really don't like this and I'm not going to use it. So I filmed some footage so I can show you what it looked like. And the reason I decided I don't like it is because the self-striping did not work on the scale of this whole cardigan that goes all the way around the circumference of my body. It was just, you know, there's like 3 or 4 different colors in each dot. It doesn't have the same striking contrast that it has when it's just on the shorter scale of the swatch. It looked great because each row was a different color, but there are 3 dots, right? 4 dots or whatever it is. And then once I get around and I'm doing 30 or 40 dots at a time, it didn't work the same way and it didn't look good and I didn't like it. So I decided, I was going to say rip back. I did not rip back. I hacked it up because this boucle stuff just felt to itself. But I didn't want to redo the ribbing because it had taken a while. So I ended up basically cutting it off underneath where the last contrast color was, and it took a while and I had to do a lot of snips because it felt it to itself, but it was pretty straightforward. It wasn't confusing or difficult. It was just a little bit time consuming. So then I was able to pick up all the stitches from the top of the ribbing and start again with some colors that I chose from stash. So I like this so much better. This is, I've now used all 4 of my contrast colors. So this is the full palette of it, and it'll repeat the same pattern again a couple times in the body before I split for sleeves. But I love it so far. This one's obviously not blocked, so the texture is a little off, but the colors that I decided to use for contrast colors are, they're different weights. I don't think it's going to affect the outcome that much in this type of garment because the contrast colors are basically just behind the main color. You basically just knit a stripe of contrast color. And then when you're doing the main color again, you do a tuck stitch, which involves dropping and laddering down in front of the stripe. So on the back, you can see the stripes go all the way across, but the weight of the yarn for the stripes is not so important, in my opinion, as to keep consistent with the main color because they're doing entirely different things structurally in the garment. So my stripes have different weights. This is Woolies from Lion brand. I have a bunch of skeins of this. This is the color Blue Mist. That's one of my stripes. Another one was I had a couple little skeins of this Wool of the Andes, Nightshade Heather. I believe this is from a thrift store because it has a thrift store price tag on it. And I don't remember ever using this color before. I have used Wool of the Andes for a couple things, but I don't remember ever using Nightshade Heather. So I'm pretty sure I just found that in a thrift store at some point. I have this pretty deep emerald that was also from a thrift store. And I have this one cake of it. It was Cascade 220, not the superwash version, just the wool version. And I got this at a thrift store with a bunch of them. There was somebody had donated a whole bunch of these in a whole bunch of colors, all caked up already. So some of them had tags and some didn't. Unfortunately, I don't know exactly which colorway this is because this one didn't come with a tag, but I know from the context that it's Cascade 220 because they all were in the same area and packaged into these bags. And then I also have left over from a project I did a couple years ago, a couple balls of this Knit Picks palette. This is the color Opal Heather, and this one's a fingering weight, but I've been holding it double, and it ends up coming out just about the same weight. Like I said, I wouldn't make an outright striped garment out of these together because the weights vary too much, but because they're kind of hidden behind the main color and the main color tucks them behind, I think it's fine. And I think I will really like this. I went really hard into this and did most of this in a couple of days and then kind of got sidetracked. Actually, I mostly got sidetracked because I decided to swap out my hibernating projects for the season, which means that I had those summer things. I worked on the Luca Cardigan instead. I started working on the Cottage Cork crop, and I just got a little distracted. I never finished that one. I think last time I talked about how I had started another Moonset Tea. That is, it's not progressed a ton, but it's a little closer. Oh, I definitely talked about it because the needle saga with the difficult needles, which is actually kind of interesting. You can see the tension difference when I switched from the unpleasant needles to the new needles I bought. And it's not just like, let me try to get it in the light here. Whoop. Can you see it? I think it's very obvious. And I even, let me hold it for my face. Hopefully it'll focus on it. I even asked my husband, can you spot the tension difference? And he went, it's there. So it's obvious even to non-knitters that the tension was really awful with those vintage metal needles that were aggravating me. Hopefully blocking will ease it a little bit and it won't look quite so ragged, but it's the upper back. So I don't have to look at it when I wear it. And I fixed it before I did the front parts. I think it's much smoother and my stitches are much more even on the start of this front panel. This top is worked. You work the ribbed neck edging at the same time as the body, and then you join once you've worked both sides to make a V-neck, and then knit it a little longer and then join in the round. So I love the Moonset Tea that I finished last year. I think this one's going to be great. This is 100% cotton from Hobie. I am worried about how this is going to hold up because I think it's going to pill, but it is already very soft, and I think it's something I'm going to love to wear, and I am probably going to wear it out and ruin it, to be honest. I can already tell that the yarn is not going to wear incredibly well, but I'm going to want to wear it all the time. All right, one more work in progress. I feel like I'm going through this pretty quick. So this one is a test knit. So this pattern isn't out yet. It's called the Cool Like You Top. And this is the designer's first pattern. This is the first time I've ever done a test knit for somebody's first pattern. So it's interesting because I feel like, is all the feedback I have helpful? I don't know. I'm going to give it all. I have a bunch of feedback. So I don't know. If it was a more established designer, I probably wouldn't have so much to say about the pattern and the way it's formatted and stuff. But since it's her first one, I feel like maybe the suggestions will be welcome. I don't know. It's a very simple top. It is the same stitch pattern as the Luca Cardigan. It is the Andalusian stitch. Andalusian. Like Andalusia. I don't know how to pronounce that correctly. But it's a super easy stitch pattern, and I think it makes such a pretty fabric. It's really, really easy, like mindless. The entire Luca Cardigan, for the most part, the body of it, I did on vacation. I started the sleeves before I came home from vacation. So it's very straightforward and mindless. It's truly 3 rows of stockinette, 1 row of knit 1 purl 1. And that's it. So it creates this cool kind of checkered, textured pucker pattern, which looks great. It's going to look so much better once it's blocked. I decided to use this yarn because I was kind of going through stash after receiving the pattern with the yarn requirements. Okay, the suggested yarn for my size was 5 balls of merino wool from Sandnesgarn, which is 5 50-gram balls. And I looked up the yardage in each of those 50-gram balls, and that totaled out to, I think it was like 580 or 570 yards or something. And I had this yarn in my stash. This is also from the late Knit Crate. This is also a yarn from Knit Crate, so sadly no longer available. This yarn base is called Ascendance. It's a chainette yarn, and based on the yardage to 100 grams ratio, they categorize it as a sport weight. To me, it looks thicker, it knits thicker, and the recommended needles were the same size. It was a large range of recommended needles, I should say, but the needle size that is called for in the pattern, which I made gauge with this yarn, is 5 millimeters, a US 8. That falls right in the middle of the range of recommended needles for this yarn. So I thought it would work fine. I do think that the fabric is great, so I think that that was correct. This meets gauge, and I should have had enough. I had 2 skeins of this, and between the two, I had 630 some yards. Sorry, the dogs just barked so long, I actually don't remember what I was saying. Based on the yardage I calculated from the suggested amount of balls of yarn you would need, this should have been way more than enough, right? This should have been what I needed plus a little buffer. Last night, as I was knitting, this is the first panel of 2. This pattern is a very boxy, oversized shirt with like a large armhole. So it's I don't want to call it a muscle tank. That's a little weird. But it is a big boxy shirt. It's basically 2 nearly rectangular panels that are exactly the same, that are seamed together, and then you add a bit of a neck ribbing and armhole ribbing. So there's a little teeny tiny bit of shaping involved, but really not much. It's effectively a rectangle. It's effectively 2 rectangles. So anyway, since it's 2 identical panels for the front and back, last night when I realized I was about to run out of my first ball of yarn and I wasn't nearly finished with the first panel, I was like, oh, I'm definitely going to need another skein of yarn. Even though I thought I had way more than enough, you can see here, just like 2 rows ago, I joined in the second ball. So I need a few more repeats. I need 4 more, excuse me. I need 4 more pattern repeats before I'm done with this panel, which is 16 rows. And I'm already out of the first ball. So I'm definitely going to need a third skein of yarn. Even though this only took a couple days, I did put a lot of work into it. I don't really want to start over. I do like the fabric, and I think I'll like it when it's done. Is a 100% wool oversized tee a practical thing to have? Not really, but I think it's pretty and I want it. Now that I've started it, I don't want to give up. So I looked online. I did find somebody destashing on Etsy. They had a couple skeins of this exact one, and it actually happened to be the same dye lot. So even though I don't want to buy more, I'm trying to get stuff out of stash. I did buy 1 skein to get 2 skeins out of stash, right? So I'm not going to be left with much when all is said and done, maybe half a ball. I didn't like spending $20. You know, it was $15 plus shipping. So I ended up spending $20 on 1 skein of yarn that I don't really think is worth that, but sunk cost fallacy, I guess. Like, that's where I'm at. It's going to solve my problem. So I only ordered that today, but I should be able to finish this panel and get a decent amount of the second panel done before I run out of these. So hopefully that Etsy order will come before that happens. All right, that's whips. Woohoo! All right, now let's do some acquisitions. There's a lot here. First of all, I brought this down to show you, but there's absolutely not going to be enough time to go through it. So I'm just going to show you. I bought this really grody, yucky sewing case from Goodwill because it was $5.28 and it's full of goodies. It has a bunch of little things, just a few notions, some thread, like there's an embroidery hoop, you know. But the thing that I thought was best was it came with a bunch of vintage patterns and a few self-drafted necktie patterns that are on this newspaper from 1970, which I thought was fun. So I'll just kind of flip through and show you some of the patterns it came with, because I think this is fun, but I'm not going to go through all of the notions and trims and things in here. because there's just not time. But I thought these like 60s and 70s patterns were so fun. And even though I don't plan on actually keeping this sewing box because it's kind of yucky, I thought for $5, I would like the contents, and then I will dispose of the yucky box. It'll end up back at a thrift store. And the person that owned this was in the same size range as me, so most of these patterns have my size included. That's one acquisition. All right, another one that I had mentioned, I actually mentioned in 2 podcasts previously, and I really thought it would be here by the last one, was this is absolutely breaking the rules of my yarn ban. However, it's a hand dyed that I've wanted for a really long time and is not always available. She does shop updates. The dyer is Mezzo Makes, again, the same person that wrote the design for the Cottage core crop that I'm knitting. And she does a couple Taco Bell themed yarns, which, if you know, you know. And I was very enthusiastic about getting my hands on her Taco Bell yarns. One is Baja Blast themed, and the other is like 90s throwback variegated. They're so good. You'll see in a second. But I had told myself in the past, next time she does an update, I'm going to get them because I always think about it. And then I don't, and then I'm sad later. So that's what I did. So this shop update was in the middle of my yarn ban, but I did it anyway, and I spent too much money on 5 skeins of yarn. But before they even came, I have 2 tops picked out. I know what I'm going to make out of them, and I'm very excited. So first of all, this is the Baja Blast colorway, which just kills me. It's so pretty. It's called Having a Blast. And aren't you just? My goodness. I love it. So I don't remember exactly what pattern I had picked out, but I know I picked out a Poison Girls pattern to use this with, and I purchased it shortly after buying the yarn, or pre-ordering the yarn, because I knew I was going to want to do that. It's so pretty, but I don't need the full 3 skeins to do this Poison Girls top. But I got a third one because then I have that cushion, but also I thought it would make a nice contrast color. 90s taco throwback. This is like, it's so close to my heart. It really, really is. So like, look what they look like together. They're gorgeous. So I knew I wanted to use these for something super summery, right? Because like, what's like just such a vibe, and it's fingering weight, and I only make garments really. So I thought, I want to use these for some sort of summery garment. And truly, when I'm thinking about like summer garments, I think of Knitting Tipsy. She's the summeriest knitter of them all. The most summer knitter of them all. I don't know. You know what I'm trying to say. She is summer. She is Florida in a personality, but like in a good way. The good parts of Florida, not the political parts. Anyway, I am going to make her Palm Your Knits tea out of these. And that tea uses a contrast color. So this will be most of the body, and this will be the contrast. And I'm so excited for these. I'm at a point right now where I have 11 whips. So I'm going to force myself to try to wrap up a couple before I cast on these gorgeous summer tops. But I'm very, very, very excited about these. Okay. Other acquisitions that don't count. You'll recall thrifted yarn does not count in a yarn ban. It just doesn't, because you have one opportunity to get thrifted yarn. I was at an estate sale. It wasn't really an estate sale. It's kind of like a permanent informal shop front that buys out estate sales and then puts it all in this informal shop front. But I found in one corner, there was no other knitting supplies. There was no other yarn. There was a couple like sewing machines and an overlocker, but this was the only like yarn or material that they had there. And it's just a bunch of skeins. I believe there was like 10 or 11 skeins in here of self-striping yarn. And it's from Turtle Pearl Yarns. I looked it up. They still have an active Etsy shop and website, so you could buy these if you wanted to. And then this one was also Turtle Pearl Yarn. Really cute. So they're all little self-striping mini skeins. I thought a lot of them will look really good in my what's it called? Blanket. Granny stripe blanket. This one was marked as 15. This one was marked as 4. They ended up giving me both for 15. So this one has 2 of the same colorway, and then there's also one in this one. So I might not use those in my blanket just because at this point I've got over half a skein. I might be able to use that for something else. I don't know. There's also some in here that are like, this one's overtly Christmassy. I don't see any like Halloween or anything, but most of them will end up in the blanket, but some of them I might save for other purposes. I don't know. Okay, I just thought it was a really good deal and they're cute. Another acquisition I have that's like bending the yarn ban rules. I don't think I broke them because it's like kind of like thrifting, but this was a Facebook marketplace listing. This is 9 skeins of Lion brand Woolies, which is not the best yarn in the world. It's an 80% acrylic, 20% wool, but I've used it many times before. It's worsted weight. It's good enough. It makes a decent garment, and honestly, like a sweater quantity for $25, I was like, it's worth it to me. Didn't have to go that far out of my way. This is the colorway Fisherman, which I swear somebody that I watched their podcast on YouTube recently was using this yarn in the colorway Fisherman, because I think it's funny because it's basically a colorway named after Lion brand Fisherman's wool, which is an undyed wool, 100% wool that they have that's very popular. So they like named this colorway in their synthetic blend after the actual wool yarn. But 9 skeins is more than enough for me to make a sweater. It's a nice neutral color. I'm absolutely not going to use it for a while because it's an acrylic wool blend. So that's a super cold weather thing, but it was a good deal. I mean, I probably, if I had waited for like the best sale Lion brand does, could have gotten it for like $30, $35, but it was right here and it was $25, and I was helping a fellow crafter de-stash, and at the end of the day, that's what's important. All right, one more acquisition. And this is not breaking the rules because this is an exception that I named at the beginning of the yarn ban because I had gift cards. So this was purchased with gift cards, not by spending money. I'm very proud of myself for not exercising this exception earlier. I really thought I would not make it to local yarn store day without going to the local yarn store and spending my gift cards, but I did. So I know I want to go in with a plan, but when I look at my queue, there's actually only one summer top, and I want it to be a warm weather thing. I want it to be something I'm going to work on soon. There was one summer top in my queue that I had decided to make that I didn't have yarn earmarked for it. So that kind of made it a natural choice, and that's the Margot top, which is quite popular lately. But honestly, it's so pretty and simple. So I ended up finding this. This is Juniper Moon Farms Ultimate Pima in the colorway Harbor. I truly love it. It's a very grayish navy, like a steel blue even. I got 4 skeins. I got lucky too because I found 2 skeins. Excuse me. I had found 2 skeins on the sale rack for local yarn store day, and I wanted 4 because that's how many I need to make that top. And I asked an associate, and they said, well, we don't have any more like this, but there's actually like a kit over here that has 2 skeins of this colorway in it. So I ended up buying the kit, even though I think I paid an extra $2 on top of what would have been the sale price, but I think it's worth it. I really loved this color. I had already walked around the store a couple times and nothing else really struck me. This is going to be a Margot top at some point. The other yarn purchase I made there, it's this really cool, like, is it an art? I guess it's not an art yarn, but it's like a novelty yarn. It's more of a ribbon. It's this gorgeous, like, peaches and sage and lilac and raspberry, and I just thought it was so pretty, and I immediately thought this would be so nice if I crocheted like plant hangers out of it, right? Especially for my craft room, but like hanging plant baskets would be so nice made out of this. And it was $23 for this one skein. It's from Louisa Harding Yarns. The base is called Lyrico. Colorful cotton ribbon. That says it all. I think it's gorgeous and so unique, and I was just struck. I was inspired by it, and I had a gift card, so I could be inspired by it. Another thing of note is that the New York State or the New York Fiber Trail passports are out, and they're so improved. Look at these. If you watched last year, you know that it was much smaller. It was basically just like a brochure card, and then I had to Frankenstein mine to add more spaces because I went to more stores than were listed. But this one's so cute. It's got the little map, and then they've sectioned off each region of the state has its own page. So it's so fun. I absolutely don't plan on going to 27 stores this year. That was fun last year, but it was quite an investment. And now that I've been to most of them, I'm not going to revisit, but I am going to kind of keep this in my bag as I'm traveling throughout the summer. I do go around the state a bit in the summer just by virtue of having family spread out across New York State. So I'm definitely going to hit up a bunch of these throughout the summer before it ends on October 31st. But I'm not going to go all in and go to like all of the stores again this year. And I do have a couple little freebies in here that came with, because it was local yarn store day and I made a purchase. I got this cute little pin that says local yarn store day, and it says April 27th, 2024. This little magnet that says local yarn store day, and it says April 27th, 2024. It specifies nitty gritty yarns. And then this little guy, which is so cute. It's a little key ring made of cedar. And it's I don't know what the word for this is, but it's to gauge your yarn to see how many wraps per inch and measure your yarn. And I guess it also just works as a little teeny ruler too. There we have it. I cannot believe I got through all of that. I really, really, really hope that I managed to carve out enough time to do another podcast much sooner and that this doesn't happen again, but like no promises. I have been really, really struggling to keep up. I don't say it for sympathy. I say it because like we all have different mental health stuff that we face, and it's normal, and I know that. And you know, I've had a little extra depression lately and a lot of extra work piled on top of that, and that made it really hard to cope. So something had to give, and unfortunately my channel is that something, and I don't like that that's the reality, but that's the reality, is that when I need to cut something, that's the natural explanation, or the natural, oh, again with the words, I did pretty good in the middle there. All right, well, you get the idea. I was short on energy and motivation, so I didn't make some videos. I have not edited and released the videos about redoing the craft room yet, purely because that's going to take a lot of energy to edit it and release them, but also because I want to be present and be able to interact and respond to comments and like have the time to enjoy releasing larger videos like that. I know from experience that topical videos about craft spaces perform better on YouTube, and since I know that more people are going to see it, I want to be able to fully engage. And right now I'm not there, and I'm not going to be able to actually engage with the channel when I release those, if I release them now. So they're coming. Thank you so much for your patience. Again, I know some people are very excited and ready to see them, and I hope you'll stick around and subscribe so that you'll still be here when I'm ready to release them. So thanks again for sticking around to the end of the video. I'm so glad that we sat down and got to catch up, and now I have quite a mess around me to clean up. So I hope you have a great rest of your evening and week and weekend and month and year, but I'm going to see you before then. So I'll see you in the next one. Bye.